Now you are here. However weary or whole you come, today is a day of rest. Today taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the one who takes refuge in God. I know my stress, my uncertainty, the days I feel I stretch too far. I forget that unplugging actually helps me rest and restore. God, help me practice a healthier rhythm. Help me feel rest. Help me to feel free to play. Help me taste and see that my restoration even leads to others' restoration. Today, we come to rest and play and to be restored in the Lord. May you taste and see God's refuge.
Today we come to rest and to play and to be restored in the Lord. Season of rest. Friends, this morning we are closing out our sermon series that we have been focused on for the past couple of weeks in our worship here at Grace. Summer seems like a good time to take pause for this kind of reflection, I think, this exploring of the importance of rest. More deeply, it has been centered around recognizing this necessary balance between work and rest and play in our everyday lives. And the kind of rest that I am suggesting here, it's more than just like self-care bubble baths, right? Or maybe a needed nap because we stayed up too late the night before. A deep rest can be found in activities that revive our very souls. It helps us to connect ourselves, right? With others, to connect with God. A renewing, a reviving of our spirits. So just to recap here, the first week we studied a season in the life of the prophet Elijah and his need to trust in God's gift of renewal. Within life's chaos, if you remember his story, how chaotic it was for him, God shows up to remind Elijah of God's provision, God's care through it all. So this call for a release into rest. Last week, we turned to the words of King Solomon in Ecclesiastes, the reminder that, like all the other aspects of our lives, there is a time and place for rest, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest. He's reminding us that there's this kind of cadence to life's experiences. So recognizing the importance of the rhythm of rest. And this morning we're acknowledging the fact that there is meant to be this ebb and flow for our minds and bodies and our spirits, modeled for us by God. Through the creation story, God demonstrates the need for rest, the necessity and gift of rest. So it's a call again for this meaningful kind of connection. Just this past week, I was reminded of a spring break trip to New York City that Tracy and we took Riley, our youngest daughter, with us. We went a few years ago. It had always been a place that Riley wanted to go. It was on her bucket list. And so we made the most of our time together there, made sure to visit all of the tourist spots, right? Places like Times Square and Broadway, the Statue of Liberty. going to places like the Empire State Building and Central Park and ice skating in Rockefeller Center. We did and crammed a lot into those 4 days of sightseeing. And one of our favorite stops was the MoMA, Museum of Modern Art. Now, all three of us, we have this huge love for all kinds of art. Painting, drawing, sculpture. And the MoMA, it doesn't disappoint, right? Those of you who've been there know this. We were inspired by the works of Picasso and Warhol, Van Gogh, Lichtenstein, Matisse, just to name a few. And it was interesting to me, moving from gallery to gallery, I noticed something very curious. I observed two distinct types of museum goers. Now, first, there were those who move at a kind of a rapid pace. They go from room to room. They have their camera with them. They make sure to take pictures of all the artwork, all the plaques, so that they can go back. And then they're off to the next room, wandering quickly, hardly taking time at each spot. They seem to be on this mission to see and want to experience all as much as possible in as little amount of time as I can do it, right? Moving from room to room. And then there are others who were kind of casually wandering from spot to spot, getting up close, noticing the techniques of the individual artists. On many of the galleries, there are benches, so you would find people just sitting together, taking a quiet moment to soak in all the beauty around them, to appreciate the works of art at a distance, their grand scale, their composition. Again, two very different, distinct approaches, neither wrong or bad, but varying methods for interacting with the art. You know, on a deeper level, I'm convinced that many of us, we approach rest, go with me here for a moment, the same way as this first museum goer in my story. It's part of our to-do list, right? Each and every day, this resting. I'm supposed to rest. The preacher told me I needed to rest, that I needed to take a nap. So we make sure to do it. We begrudgingly take pause to do what we feel like we should do, we are supposed to do, before we're off to our next responsibility, the next requirement of our day. We don't often take time to simply sit and to take in the beauty all around. Hey, friends, think about it. We live in a culture that glorifies busyness and constant productivity. And the thought of rest, it feels like a luxury, or even worse, laziness. When we hear this call for rest, people often share the sentiment, well, I'll rest when I'm dead, right? I'll take time to sleep when I'm dead, or I'll wait until retirement to rest. That's when I'm going to sleep. That's when I'm going to rest. We're so consumed by our calendars, our phones, our tasks, and everyday concerns that we move from moment to moment in life without pause. The challenge and unwritten expectation in our lives is to do and to be more. And so we have difficulty receiving this call to step back, to soak in, to reflect. At times we overlook the simple gift of rest. Well, what's critical to realize is that our text this morning is teaching us the importance of a different kind of cadence and perspective when it comes to our everyday lives. And what's so interesting is that we find inspiration, we find encouragement to rest from a rather unexpected kind of source, I think, from God. Backing up a bit in our story, we have to remember the order and movement we find here in Genesis. Here at this point in our story as God's people, God creates the heavens and the earth and the light. God divides the sky and creates the oceans. God forms the dry ground, the grasses, the fruit trees. And then he picks up with the creation of the lights and the heavens, the sun and the moon and the stars. He fashions all the moving creatures and fowl. He creates the cattle and all the animals that creep on the earth. Male and female, he forms to care for it all. And after 6 days of creative power and divine imagination, God does something deeply instructive. God rests. Now, the text reminds us, on the seventh day, having finished his task, God rested from all his work. Now, the Hebrew word used here is Shabbath, which means to stop or to cease. Now, God takes a pause from his creative work, not from exhaustion or a result of weariness, but because his work is finished. It's not a physical kind of collapse here, but it is a deliberate act of joy. God's resting. As theologian J.I. Packer observes, God's rest is not inactivity, but the enjoyment of accomplishment. So to continue the art illustration here, it's very much like an artist stepping back from the canvas to take in the beauty of their finished masterpiece. I mean, think about it. This is a sacred kind of moment. God ceases work for the sole purpose of being in relationship with all of that which God had created. And if you notice, what's even more remarkable is that God blesses, God sanctifies this day of rest. This moment of Scripture marks the first time that anything is called holy. Not a place, not a person, but a day. Time itself is declared sacred. I mean, consider it. Here we have our all-knowing, omnipotent God and Creator taking pause, intentional about appreciating all of that which he had created. And y'all, Jesus does similar kinds of things in the Gospels. Rest from his teaching, to spend time with his disciples, to go away from the crowds, to be in prayer and rest. I would venture to suggest that the Holy Spirit does the same in followers, to settle and rest within, to offer comforting peace, meaningful purpose. Time and time again, in all shapes and forms, God providing the example of the sacredness of rest. Friends, from the very beginning of our story as people of faith, rest is not simply a biological need, but an incredibly important part of the rhythm of all of creation. The calling of spiritual, emotional, physical Sabbath. It's a beautiful image, I think. God resting from all of his creating in order to be in relationship with the world that God created. And the challenge that we've been considering these weeks together is, how do we do the same? How do we take time to pause from the busyness in order, as I mentioned before, to more meaningfully connect with ourselves, with the people around us, with God? How do we make space, if you will, for this Sabbath rest? Now, here recently, I came across an interesting story from years ago. It's of a man who stops by to see a farmer who was plowing his field with a team of oxen. Now, this man, he noticed that one of the animals was larger than the other, so he asked the farmer about it. And the response from this farmer, it was interesting. He said that the larger animal, the ox, it was older, he was well-trained, and the smaller, younger one was newer to this whole process, newer to using a yoke across its shoulders. And he asked why these two were paired together for the plowing, and the farmer put it this way. He said, "The older ox knows his way around the field. And the reason that I put the younger ox with him is so that the older, more knowledgeable ox can teach him how to plow. If I didn't put them together, the younger one would never learn." And he went on to say, by himself, the younger ox would pull himself to death. This is what happens. But together, he learns to cooperate with and rest in the strength of the older ox. Growth through connection, through guidance. And church, what I want you to take to heart this morning is the fact that one of the ways that we learn how to truly rest is by meaningfully connecting in and with God. Does that make sense? Now, God serves as the ultimate model for us from which to learn and grow. The question is, are we fully yoked to God? Are we fully connected in every way to him? Well, Jesus reminds us, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you" what? Rest. "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Now, Sabbath rest, whatever that looks like for you, whatever that feels like for you, it is a spiritual posture that offers trust in the one with whom we are connected. Opportunity to be joined together with our Maker, to grow and be stretched by his example. Opportunity to reclaim the goodness of this world all around. Rest in and with God as gift. A few years ago, Adam Mabry published a book entitled "The Art of Rest: Faith to Hit Pause in a World That Never Stops." And in it, he discusses how rest, it fuels our confidence in God's sovereignty as we learn to depend on him, to depend on God. But he also writes about how it makes space for relationships and shared experiences, how it liberates us from the pressure of self-reliance and gives us the chance just to simply reflect. Rest is, and it can be, life-changing. And in the book, he writes this. He says, rest is not a religious action to be added to a list. It isn't a duty to be performed. It is a delight to be enjoyed. Taking and finding delight in rest. So how are you doing this? How are we claiming this promise? Well, I think it begins first and foremost by choosing to be connected, intentional about being connected with our heavenly God. Now, it begins by acknowledging our human limitations. It begins by making that space in our calendars and our hearts for regular, deliberate rest. Now, if you think about it, God's rest, it wasn't a footnote in the creation story. It was this crescendo, right? Leading up to this powerful moment. God invites us into the same kind of holy rhythm, the same sacred movement, in order that we might work with purpose, that we might live with joy. So the question is, it's not, do you need rest? We all need rest. Rather, how are you choosing to claim it? How will you receive this peace that God offers so that we might more deeply connect with him? Everyday Sabbath rest. Finding time. Finding God. We all pray with me. Rest in this moment with me.